The community MVP is another favorite of mine, and I think this is a really interesting one because you see so many people talking about, I want to build a group of X who can essentially share information or better products together, whatever it is. You're trying to build a community, and oftentimes the first thing that I hear is, I've got to build a place where these people can go. And so my suggestion is that sites don't build communities, communities build sites, is the first thing to know here, is that I think if you can build a community or find a community, they'll go wherever you tell them, but it's less about necessarily finding a site and attracting people to it. So I think one of the things that's important as you think about building a community MVP is use existing places where people go or people gather. So one of the things that I've seen is really interesting is create a Facebook group and see how people engage on that. Or kind of use meetup.com and see if you can get people to form a group and come to the event that you're doing, the local thing. Or write a blog post, write a blog about this area and see if you can get those people to come there. Finally, the one that I think is the funniest MVP that I've ever heard, but I think it's a brilliant one, is host a conference. If you literally think that you want to get a bunch of doctors together and build the social network for doctors, get them to meet up live and see if you can build an in-person group that they might pay you for, but ultimately will become a social network. But the goal here is try to build a community first, don't focus on building a site. So tell everyone what Whittle is.
Whittle is an attempt to build a platform for communities of shared interest, to be the site of first resort for people to pursue their passions and explore new interests, to become the next transitive verb. So just as you Google everything, you will whittle your interests, share your wits, keep up with your fellow whittlers. So the bar we've set for ourselves is fairly low to be the next everywhere, everyone site.
I like it. So I picked on you largely because your goal simply is to build a community. What do you think is the first group that you think is most interesting to you for whittling?
We're looking to identify groups that have diversity on a couple of dimensions. So some broad groups, so photography is going to be one, gardening is another, and then some that are nichier. I happen to like Virginia wines. I have a home out in the country. So that will be in there. DC, a number that will be DC based since that's where our local networks are. And so part of, I guess, the summary characterization is we're going after groups that are diverse in terms of type of interest, probably diverse a bit in terms of demography, at least by age.
We're going to focus on how you find bird watchers and the like. I think that's where I think the value in this is if you can get plenty of those people to a community. I think one of the things you might want to be really trying to figure out is, can you wind up acquiring users that you need to get your community started? Because I think, as you said, ubiquity requires people taking their activity from one place into another, and you have some features that you believe are important. But let's focus on how you wind up acquiring users in a set of MVPs. So have you done any AdWords testing before?
No.
Okay. Have you ever used kind of Facebook ads at all?
No.
Okay. Have you done any ads before? Ever done any ads before?
Not in a web context.
Okay. Have you ever done, how to say this right, but have you ever used kind of discussion forums to actually troll people and bring them to, see if you can drive them to another platform?
Not intentional as a troll.
Right, good.
I've tried to avoid it.
Got it. So I think one of the things that what I would recommend for you really to do is actually to start to figure out what are the different channels to drive people to somewhere, to figure out what that process looks like. Because I think there's nothing worse. We talked about earlier kind of the empty bar syndrome here. You've got a risk hugely of the empty bar syndrome.
Is that the biggest bar?
Yeah, you've got a big bar.
Star Wars.
And besides, so again, my first piece of advice to you, which we talked about last time, is I would pick one. If you don't pick one, I would just focus for some of your user acquisition testing. I would focus on one. So the first thing I want to ask is, do you have kind of a place that I can go on whittle.com and basically say, like, keep me posted on when the site's live? Like, can I put my email address in there? Okay, so first piece of advice to you, and this is advice for everyone here. If you're going to launch an MVP, always find a place that you can send someone to see if they wind up discovering your site or whatever it is, that they can go and basically give you their email address, for further information. It's super simple. You can do it with any kind of forms, MailChimp, whatever it is, but it should take less than 5 minutes to do. So that's your first thing, is like somewhere on your site, put a place that I can put my information in there. Ultimately, one of the things I told last time is, bizarrely, we had a one-page landing page that had a place you could put your email address. And for 60 days between kind of when we started telling people we were working on this company to when we launched, so 60 days there, we had 35,000 people that gave us their email addresses. So start getting people who might be interested in Whittle to go there. So that's my first piece of advice, is find a way that you can track people. Second thing is, I think that you probably need to can test various kind of channels to see what is the actual user acquisition cost, because some ways you might be willing to pay for a little bit of traffic to come in, even so that when you turn on these communities, you essentially can have people who are ready to come in there. So I think that you've got a perfect opportunity to build that one simple page, that landing page where people can sign up for information about whatever channel it is. I'd pick one. If it's going to be bird watching or whatever it is, you just want to test whether or not that works. So again, my first thing is you can wind up going on Google and get $100 of AdWords credits for free. So literally go to, I'll email this out to the whole class, but you can get enough to test on, which is just something simple like that. I also recommend you trying Facebook out. I think Facebook has some great ways to advertise people to come in. And it turns out you can target in incredibly granular ways when you're looking to see like they have interest in bird watching. Turns out you should probably market to people that have interest in bird watching to see if those people can come through. And the last thing is, I think that it's worth you starting to do some kind of, we'll call it like social media type marketing a little bit, where writing blog posts and kind of sharing them out and seeing if you can get people to come through there for sure. But I think your goal, if I were to do anything, is figure out what does it cost to acquire a user. And you're tracking to see if you get someone to put their email address in and click like submit, that's your ultimate like a new potential user. They're not a full user yet, but even to have some people that are kind of in process early is a great one. You're asking people if they don't have a group that they wish they were in, what's keeping them from doing it.
There you go.
And so your strategy, just to make that clear, your strategy is that you believe you're hunting for people that haven't taken a step in a group versus stealing from other places.
Well, in part, it's both. I asked one of those questions. But
Okay.
I would just say it's like any marketplace. The integrity of the information that you're getting in a lot of groups online, you find that there's either a dearth of relevant information or relevant users, or just in the marketplace has been sort of infected by a lot of irrelevant stuff.
Yeah.
And so, especially in LinkedIn groups, they're just overrun by irrelevancy. So you just never go back to them, or you shut off the emails.
Yeah, I think that's a good one too. I would agree with that. Is to say, like, I think of all the groups that I'm many members of, LinkedIn might have the worst set of groups. So it wouldn't be hard for me if you could find one that's professional. I'm not sure hobbies are one that I've had an issue with, but that's mine for sure.
I think I would have to base off the answer as well. The LinkedIn is, LinkedIn's real terrible, but one website that I truly do like is Meetup.
Yeah.
You should definitely check meetup.com. It's funny how we came with the quote, the individuals, the communities make the website,
Yeah.
which is very true. I mean, literally, I go on Meetup every day just to meet some new people. So that's a website you should definitely look at. Definitely with the same interest. I mean,
Clearly one of the many competitors.
For an MVP, if he were to put icons that represent a whole bunch of different groups, like bird watching, tennis, and say, is anyone interested? Give me your email. Is that an MVP?
Sure, absolutely. My feedback to Marty early on has been, I think that it's a mistake to do 6 places to start out with. I do think that you should use this time to test what you go after. So ultimately, I think you're not going to have enough information about any one of the 6 to make any certain guesses. So I would treat these a little bit more linear. Pick one and basically fail fast at it. Like, see if you can get 5,000 bird watchers in the place. If you can't, like, scrap it and go on to wines or whatever it might be. So that's my piece of feedback, generally speaking. So I know that you have a different approach on it, but again, I would advise picking one, because the problem when you have 6 things is there's so much noise that you can't tell what the signal is. So you might have like kind of things trucking along. How do you tell which one's really doing well or poorly? So again, if I were encouraging you, and if my opinion were worth anything, I would say definitely pick one. trust your gut. What do you think is the best one? And go after that one very hard and find out in 2 weeks, can you wind up driving to 1,000 members in one whittle? And if you can't, then you're like, we failed. Move on to the next one and very quickly move on. Ultimately, these user acquisition strategies are going to matter no matter what it is, but I would encourage you, and again, I think all of you guys, it's why I encourage to say, I would recommend building groups now, even if they're not in whittle, but see, can you wind up driving people into something early on? There was literally a site that was set up at a weekend hackathon called Secret London. Has anyone heard of this before? Essentially, we're not British, so I guess we wouldn't know necessarily, but they basically set up a group and started doing kind of these secret games and quizzes. Within 2 weeks, they had 180,000 members on Facebook, on a Facebook group. And that ultimately then became a startup that you can see down there below. Their new home is now no longer on Facebook, and they're trying to get people over. Now, they have not been super successful. They've not moved 180,000 people over. As of the time of this writing, over a couple weeks when they launched their new site, they launched about 10% of them over. So we're talking about 1,800. So not huge numbers, but better to start with 1,800 than it is to start with 0. So one thing that these guys did was launch this concept on Facebook and then moved it over.